Some moments in life make you stop and ask yourself why certain people choose to step back when the world still expects them to keep going. Why does someone who has spent decades bringing laughter to millions suddenly decide it's time to face the quiet? And how do you let go of a life built on applause, noise, and constant movement when the silence finally knocks on your door? These questions linger heavily as Jay Leno's unexpected announcement sends a wave of emotion through Hollywood and far beyond, touching everyday people who grew up with him, keeping them company late at night. His decision comes at a time when the world itself feels uncertain, when families are cutting costs, when shopping carts look lighter, and when even simple joys feel expensive. Against that backdrop, a once unstoppable entertainer steps forward and admits he can no longer outrun the reality of time. For many people, Jay Leno wasn't just a face on television. He was part of their nightly routine, someone who helped ease the weight of the world with jokes that felt familiar and warm. His rise from small comedy clubs to becoming the host of one of the most iconic shows in American history has always sounded like a story built on drive, humor, and heart. He was the guy who didn't need to be edgy to be funny, who didn't need to shock to make people laugh. His charm came naturally, almost effortlessly, shaped by years of watching audiences, listening to them breathe, and finding that sweet spot where humor meets comfort. For more than 2 decades on The Tonight Show, he wasn't just a host. He was an anchor during some of the country's most defining cultural moments, reminding people that laughter still had a place even in difficult times. But behind the bright lights in his classic denim shirts, there was a man quietly carrying scars few ever saw. His love for classic cars became almost symbolic of who he was. Someone who appreciated detail, craftsmanship, and the beauty of things built to last. Yet it was inside those same garages that life dealt him some of his most terrifying experiences. The fire that severely burned his face and hands, the motorcycle accident that injured him just months later. These incidents weren't just painful. They were reminders of how fragile even the strongest personalities can be. While the world kept laughing, Jay was working through recovery after recovery, forcing himself back into motion before the scars even had time to settle. He did it with the same resilience audiences admired in him, but beneath that resilience lived an exhaustion that only grew heavier with time. In recent months, fans began noticing something unusual. Jay wasn't everywhere anymore. No surprise appearances, no sudden drop-ins at comedy clubs, fewer public outings. At first, it felt like a normal slowdown, something expected from a man in his 70s. But then the silence stretched longer, and even those closest to him felt the shift. When he finally appeared again, standing quietly in his Burbank garage, the same space that once represented joy and passion, his tone said more than his words. He spoke softly, choosing every phrase with care, and when he admitted that, you can work your whole life trying to make people laugh, but eventually you have to face the silence. It felt like a truth he had been wrestling with for much longer than anyone realized. It wasn't a line for impact, it was a confession wrapped in wisdom, spoken by someone who had finally stopped pretending he was indestructible. That moment became even more emotional when he shared something deeply unexpected. His decision to donate a significant portion of his beloved car collection to support young mechanics and engineers. These cars weren't just machines. They were pieces of his soul, reminders of his childhood, and symbols of everything he had built. Letting them go wasn't simply a philanthropic gesture. It was a personal farewell to a version of himself that could no longer keep pace with the demands of maintaining such a world. He talked about wanting to give others the tools and opportunities he fought hard to create for himself. To many, it felt like the kind of gesture only someone preparing for a major change, perhaps even a final chapter, would make. His wife, Mavis, has always been a quiet pillar in his life, and those close to them say she was instrumental in helping him recognize that slowing down isn't the same as giving up. After the accidents, she watched him push himself to keep performing, even when the pain lingered well after the cameras turned off. Together, they faced difficult conversations about aging, health, and happiness. Conversations most people avoid for as long as possible. Her encouragement helped him understand that stepping back doesn't erase the legacy you've built. Sometimes it protects it. That understanding became the foundation not just for his announcement, but for something even more personal. The creation of a documentary called The Last Ride. This documentary, which has already stirred strong reactions among insiders, isn't the flashy farewell you might expect from a Hollywood figure. Instead, it follows Jay through intimate reflections on his life beyond fame, including a heartfelt restoration of the first car he ever bought. The project weaves together open conversations about his injuries, aging, and rediscovering joy in quieter spaces. There are moments where he confronts the emotional aftermath of his accidents, moments when he laughs at old memories, and moments when he sits silently, allowing the weight of his journey to settle. It is a tribute not just to his career, but to the honest truth of being human. Alongside the documentary, Jay has been working on a memoir based on private journals he kept during his recovery. These entries reveal sides of him rarely seen. Fears about losing mobility, reflections about the loneliness of constant success, confessions about missing important personal moments because of work, and the fragile balance between public joy and private pain. What sets this memoir apart is the rawness of his writing. He doesn't try to make himself look heroic or flawless. He simply writes about the reality of being someone who gave so much of himself to the world that he forgot how to slow down. Mavis's words also appear throughout the book, shaping a fuller picture of the man people thought they knew. When the documentary premiered at a small art house theater in Los Angeles, the decision surprised many. Jay could have chosen any grand venue, but he returned to a place that held meaning from his early days, a space where he performed before fame changed his life. The audience filled the room with quiet anticipation, absorbing every emotion from the screen. There was no red carpet, no paparazzi, no glitter. Just a sincere gathering of people honoring a story of resilience and honesty. This stripped-down celebration reminded everyone that fame is temporary, but authenticity can echo for a lifetime. One particularly moving part of the documentary features rare footage of Johnny Carson, Jay's mentor and predecessor. In one scene, Carson gives Jay advice during a challenging moment in his early career. Just be yourself. The jokes will stop working someday, but the truth never will. Hearing that, especially now, creates an emotional thread connecting past and present. It gives viewers a deeper understanding of the values Jay held throughout his career, and why his decision to step back feels both heartbreaking and profoundly dignified. Another powerful section shows Jay returning to the hospital where he was treated for severe burns. Instead of focusing on his own suffering, he expresses deep gratitude for the medical staff who helped save him. He spends his time acknowledging their work, their sacrifices, their patience. It's easy to forget that behind every headline about a celebrity's injury, there are people doing the real work. The doctors, nurses, and specialists who fight to give someone another chance. Jay's attention to them in the film highlights his humility, his awareness that fame does not shield anyone from vulnerability. The film closes with a symbolic moment that viewers say left the entire room silent. Jay drives a fully restored classic car down a quiet desert road as the sun begins to set. His narration, soft and reflective, speaks about appreciating the ride more than the destination. He doesn't talk about endings. He talks about acceptance, about finding peace in places he once overlooked, about letting go without fear. It is not a moment of sadness, but one of serenity, a quiet embrace of the natural rhythm of life. Following the premiere, tributes from fellow entertainers began pouring in. Comedians, actors, and longtime friends spoke about his humility, his tireless work ethic, and the way he treated everyone with the same respect, whether they were superstars or stagehands. Many described him as a quiet pioneer, someone who shaped late-night comedy with unwavering consistency and kindness. Others shared personal stories of how he encouraged them, supported them, or simply made them feel seen. These reactions showed that Jay's legacy isn't about ratings or awards. It's about the impact he made through genuine connection. Yet behind all the applause and celebration lies the quieter truth. Jay's body has endured more than the public ever knew. The long-term effects of the fire and motorcycle accident didn't vanish. They followed him daily, sometimes limiting his movement, causing pain, or reminding him that time had begun to take more than it gave. In the documentary and memoir, he admits that the hardest part of aging isn't losing fame. It's waking up and realizing your body is no longer the machine it used to be. This vulnerability reshapes the narrative of his farewell, turning it into a universal reflection on facing the inevitable with courage. Still, even with the physical limitations, Jay refuses to let the tone of his exit sound defeated. He remains committed to mentoring young talent, guiding aspiring comedians and mechanics, and offering wisdom rooted in decades of experience. His message to them is simple yet profound. Find joy, not just success. He emphasizes that fame is fleeting, but passion and kindness hold their value forever. This passing of the torch feels like the perfect continuation of his legacy, one built on giving rather than receiving. Perhaps the most emotional part of Jay's transition is the leaked letter he wrote. A deeply personal message reflecting on the moments he sacrificed for his career. He writes about missing quiet dinners, long drives, or small celebrations because the show always came first. Yet he also expresses immense gratitude for the laughter he shared with millions, acknowledging that it wasn't fame that fulfilled him, but connection. The letter resonated across social media, reaching people of all ages who recognized themselves in his words. It encouraged conversations about balance, boundaries, and remembering that life should be lived, not just worked through. As production continues and more people watch the documentary, it becomes clear that Jay Leno's farewell is not a simple goodbye. It is a meditation on time, purpose, and the value of slowing down. His story weaves together joy and pain, success and sacrifice, humor and vulnerability. It reminds audiences that even the brightest entertainers eventually face the same realities everyone else does. What defines them is not how long they stay in the spotlight, but how gracefully they step out when the time comes. In the end, Jay's decision to step back becomes a powerful reminder that every life, no matter how public or private, moves in chapters. His final chapter is written with honesty, humility, and acceptance. He leaves with gratitude rather than regret, peace rather than fear, and a legacy rooted in kindness, laughter, and genuine humanity. And as he moves into a quieter life, he invites the world to remember that the road ahead doesn't always need speed. Sometimes it just needs appreciation. If you enjoyed this look into Jay Leno's emotional transformation and final chapter, make sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel for more powerful stories behind the names you know. Your support helps us share more meaningful narratives just like this one.